Hi, this is Dominic from Paphos Life, and this is another of our long format country drives. So we're going to be starting off by the village of Trozena, and we're going to be driving through there in Gerovasa down to the Diarizos Valley. And we'll head down to Prastio and then cut across to the Xeros Valley, and from there we'll go down the main road to Caletria and go past the Asprokremmos Reservoir and finish at the B6. Yeah, it's quite sad really, because not too far from here will be where lots of the fire damage was, but I think Trozena will have avoided that because it's further west than where the damage was. But we've just come off the road that goes to Dora, where you're coming from the Troodos Mountains, and that's in our last big film. That's what we did in order to get to Troodos. We went up via Kuklia, Archimandrita, Dora, and then up where do we go to? Finney, sorry. And we went as far as Handara Falls. But this was the journey back from there, and this time we decided to cut across this road and head down into Trozena and Gero Vasa. Now, when we first came across Trozena and Gero Vasa, funnily enough, they were both abandoned villages, looking quite sorry for themselves. But as you can see, coming up soon, that is no longer the case, at least not for Trozena. Before we get there, though, I will be doing some filming of the fire damage in Limassol and the surrounding area, but at the moment it's still pretty ongoing, so to speak. I mean, it's been announced that it's out, but they're on full alert, so I want to give it a few more days for it to calm down, and then I'll take me a car out with the cameras and my drone and film some of the devastation, because I don't want to get in their way for obvious reasons. But it's been a very traumatic couple of days for a lot of people in the Limassol district, and there was a smaller fire also just north of Paphos too. And but the responses have all been great, and the people are now rallying around and collecting, etc. I did post an article summarising all the contact details for sending money or goods, etc. So I'll put a link to that here as well. But thoughts are with all those affected by the fire. Anyway, back to Trozena. When we first visited the place, it wasn't completely abandoned because there was a little church in it which was still in use, and I think there was one building I remember had big padlocks on it, but this is what most of it looked like. Just basically an overgrown place. It used to be a Greek Cypriot village, and I think they left the area just because it was so remote. They certainly weren't forced to move because of the war, or the invasion rather. But we'll just pootle our way around the road. Now, this road itself is quite weird, because if you look on Google Maps, according to that, it doesn't exist unless you use a satellite. Please do subscribe to our channel while we're here. If you like our films, it doesn't cost you anything, and it does help us with the YouTube algorithm, and share them far and wide. And if you want to help us out financially, go to our Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/Paphos Life and chuck us a few coffees. They're all gratefully received. And if you want to get something back in return, go to our Zazzle store at zazzle.co.uk/store/Paphos Life/collections. And there you can buy all sorts of memorabilia featuring pictures that we've taken, and originally we post them on Facebook. Our Calamera and Calispera shots go up on our Paphos Life Facebook page. So in Cyprus, Facebook's the big thing. Now, we're coming up to Trozena now, and it's being reborn, believe it or not. I did an article on this. I'm not exactly sure who is doing the rebirth, but they're doing a pretty good job of it. Let's give you some pictures so you can see what I'm talking about. There you go. There's been a lot of clearance and they're doing a lot of repair work. And they seem to have big plans for the village. I don't know what. There's no official website or anything, so we'll just have to wait and see. But that was a big surprise to us when we drove past there. Not what we were expecting at all. Now, there's another treat for you just down here. It looks very rickety, but it's been up there since probably the 50s, I'd imagine. It's an old Bailey bridge built by British soldiers when Britain ruled Cyprus. And we'll get a side view in a mo. There you go, it's a nice picture of it from the side. Yeah, and every time I see that thing, I think it's going to fall down, but it's still there. Now, on the left is a big secret of Trozena, which you won't normally see. What you need is a very, very wet winter, and it's happened twice since we've lived here in the last 10 years, and once it was a bit feeble, but the other time it was pretty spectacular. And there's a river that a stream that runs through Trozena. It's normally pretty dried up, but obviously all the water has to come out of that, go over that cliff that's on the left. So when there's been a lot of rain, then you get a sight like this, and it looks spectacular. Hopefully this winter we'll get to see that, because we're going to have lots and lots of rain this year. It'll fill up the reservoirs again. That's the plan anyway. Right, after Trozena there is another village, its sister village called Gerovasa. Now this was a Turkish Cypriot village, and you can see there's a link to the blog that we wrote on there. And all the residents here had to move. I think they had to move even before the invasion, because there was intercommunal fighting in the 50s and 60s. And there's some very sad memories from the Turkish Cypriot community here. But that's their little village. There's schools on the right, just past up there, I think, what I remember. Because I did go exploring here a while ago. Now, if you come in this early spring, it's very overgrown, as this picture shows. But later on, it is possible to walk around the village and see the old ruins. It's a crying shame, but there you go. Right, we're going to have some music now. Now, historians may be interested in it, but there used to be an old monastery on the right here, which is now just farmland. You can't go exploring there though, because it's all fenced off. So I'll just mention it in passing. Now we're just coming into the bottom of the Diarizos Valley, and you wouldn't think so at the moment, but when it rains really heavily, roads can get washed away like what you have here. There's no big crack in the middle, that's just a shadow, but the road that you can see on the right used to go further, but it got washed away. That happened, that was just up over past that bridge there, by the way. That happened in the last big wet winter, and hopefully this winter coming up is going to be a big wet winter too. Now, on the right is a farm track which will take you to Panaya Salmiatissa Monastery, plus other, well, farms, I guess. If you're on a four-wheel drive, it's quite an enjoyable route, and it's worthwhile going to the monastery because you'll get lots of nice scenery like this, but also the monastery itself is an amazing place. It looks lovely from a distance, and it's well worth exploring the grounds. Highly recommend it. But if you're not in a four-wheel drive, there is an easier way of getting there, and I'll show you that route later in the film. Now, going back to the raid, first of all, we're coming through the village Kadasi now, and there's not a lot in Kadasi, but I do think that there may well be a coffee shop. So if you've been exploring the area on foot and want a drink, before heading all the way back to Paphos, take a little look in there first. I think you might have just gone past it there. There aren't many places to have a drink around here. There's the Extreme View Cafe, which we're coming up to in a while. But so by all means, stop in Kadasi if you have a thirst on. Anyway, yeah, when we've had a particularly wet winter, which tends to happen every 7 years, but cannot be guaranteed to do so, the valleys themselves look utterly amazing. I mean, dried up riverbeds become fully fledged rivers again, and it always surprises me is when it does occur, they just look like they've always been rivers. It may not make sense, but it doesn't look like what you'd expect a periodic river to look like. Like it doesn't have lots of trees growing out of it or whatever. It just looks like there's always been a river there. But in a few months' time, that'll have all gone. So, I mean, in the last time it happened, I didn't really have the camera equipment to do the scenery justice. But if it happens this winter, by the time I've finished, you will all be bored. I'll have bored the pants off you, put it that way. I was thinking of polite words there. Because I'm going to film a lot. Now, we're coming up to another famous place. This is the Rock of Chasampoulion. And there was a little link there. If you pause that, you'll see the link, and I'll show you a film of the area. And here are a few film stills taken from that. It's a famous area, partly for climbers who love the rocks, but also because there was, if you like, a Robin Hood character who, I don't know whether he stole from the poor and gave to the rich, but basically, I think it was a Turkish Cypriot guy, did lots of hold-ups there. So the legend that I read had about it. Anyway, I'm sure people will comment about it because it's not an unknown story, put it that way. But the countryside here along the whole of Diarizos Valley is amazing, lovely and beautiful, and it's a very pleasant drive. I haven't yet done a road trip of the area. I was going to do one a few years ago, but unfortunately I got distracted by a side route that took me through a forest. I won't go into many more detail because I think I mentioned that on the previous film up. Now we're going to some more information signs, which means we're approaching the abandoned village of Prastio. Now we'll just get past the turning here because we don't want to go down the Diarizos Valley anymore. Well, I was quite keen on it, but my daughter didn't. There was a sign up there, a little yellow discarded sign, which I drove past. It said road closed, but because it'd been pushed to the side, I happily ignored it. But anyway, this is Prastio, and as an abandoned village go, you don't get many more abandoned than this. There weren't any roads to it. I had to walk through a very prickly field and past lots of wheat fields to get there. And in the trees there were lots of processionary caterpillar nests, so basically it's a good place to avoid, really. But now we're going up the hill to Trachypedoula, and I'm going to have a bit more music before I go too far up this road. So we're just coming into Trachypedoula. There's a mural by the side of the road there to welcome you. And this is the diversion that the old sign must have been warning us of. Now, if you stay and watch the rest of the film through this village, I don't think that diversion is meant for regular cars like this one. I think it was just saying it. If you've got a big heavy vehicle, go this way. But we thought it would be fun to go this way anyway. So this is where we're off to. And it's definitely a back route for a village. It was nicely signposted though. Well, in part it was anyway. Through the trickiest parts. Now you're seeing what Cypriot back gardens look like. I'm trying to work out where I'm going, because one thing I wouldn't want to do especially in this car, which wasn't my off-road car, is to get a farm track that goes into the middle of nowhere, because they can get quite treacherous, especially because what normally happens to an untended farm track is that when you have winter rains that are heavy, it'll have a stream running through the middle of it, which over the years will eat into it and produce a nice little canyon in the middle of the road, which can be very treacherous. But fortunately I was able to negotiate the one-way system that they had put in place, or the diversion rather. I don't think it was one way. So now we're back into the village itself. Very picturesque, pretty little village, completely off all the tourist radars, but as an authentic Cypriot village as you can get. It's quite remote, has to be said. See, there's the other side of that diversion. I'm trying to work out exactly where I'm supposed to be going now, because I've driven through Trachypedoula before, only a couple of times, has to be said. I don't normally come this way. And I ended up on the road to, and excuse the pronunciation, Stavrokonnu. And this is where I was hoping to go this time as well. I'm not sure which road I'm supposed to be taking, because I've always come the other way. And I think I should have taken the left-hand turn there, but instead I took the right-hand turn, so I didn't even realise that there were two northern exits from Trachypedoula. So yes, this route wasn't what I was expecting, but it did eventually take me out onto the main road. So now I need to turn left. And this road, if I stay on this, it'll take me all the way down to the B6 again eventually. But there are a few places to see along the way. And this is the kind of situation where the anamorphic lens really comes into its own. Lovely crisp image of the entire valley. Now I filmed this film before they had the fires in Limassol, but because of the complexity of it and all the pictures I've put in, etc., it's taken me a while to do the audio of it. But all this area here, none of it was affected by the fires. We're too far west for that, but not to say that its own little tinderbox. So if you're ever out in the countryside, don't even think about leaving rubbish, or more importantly, extinguishing cigarettes. If you got to put a fag out, stick it in a tin can that you've been drinking out of. It's got a little bit of fluid in it, and stick it in the bottom there of that. And then when you get to a proper bin somewhere back in the city, empty it that way. Don't leave rubbish out in the countryside, because it's just going to be there and waiting to start a fire. Enough rubbish gets left in there without you as a tourist adding to it. I've always had that policy, even with when you go to picnic sites. If you can, take the rubbish home with you and dispose of it there. Because all those picnic sites, especially when it gets busy, I mean, this is not just Cyprus, it's the same UK, wherever, they will just overflow, and then animals will come along and take it, what they can, and it'll just get dragged, and the rubbish gets dispersed, and it'll eventually get cleared up, but some of it will be missed, and it's that sort of stuff that can start fires. Because, okay, a lot of fires are started deliberately, but some of them it just takes a bit of rubbish. I remember there was a fire right near our house. It was on just 2 fields away, and our webcam that we got, looking out over the field, we were able to see where it started, and it looked like it was someone had chucked the can out, possibly even with a lit cigarette in it, who knows. But that had eventually gone up, and from this little tin can, all the hedges had gone up, and then within a minute the entire field was burnt. I was amazed how quick it was. Right, now we're coming to the village of, I think this is Trachypedoula. Now there's a nice mural here that I like. There's more than one that I've got to track down, the other one actually, because I've got my bumper book of murals, which I was plugging the other day in my Amiantos hospital film, which you should go and see if you haven't already watched it, because it was an ace film. And so this is a nice little village as well. Again, it's off the tourist radar really. But they have a lovely mural. It's a very odd mural of a policeman chasing a goat thief. And whether it was done as a public information mural or just as a joke, I don't know. But they've done another film in this village, so I need to go and have a look at that so I can photograph it. The next time I'm driving through, I'll know. And yeah, going back to that book on murals, one thing I might not have made clear is that every mural has the GPS coordinates of it right next to it, so you'll be able to find exactly where they are. So which is how I know I'll be able to find the other mural. It seemed to have something to do with a donkey and a bus from what I can remember. But the one they do up here I've liked, we're just coming up to it. You probably missed it, but there you are, that's what it is. I like that. Bit silly, but also informative. Now, you might have seen turnings there to the right. These are ways that you can cross the valleys, and especially when it's not really heavy winter, it's a pleasant drive. Winter time, if there's lots and lots of rain, you might find bridges washed out, though they have been repaired to the extent that very little should happen to very few of them now. But only go those routes to cross the valleys if you're not in a hurry, basically, because it may look a shorter route on the map, but they're very winding, and it'll take you a long time. It's a lovely drives there will be, but if you've had a day at the Troodos and just want to get home, you're better off staying on the main roads like this one. We have a little bit more music coming up. I'm not sure what song I plugged in, but we'll find out together. You may have noticed a sort of cowboy theme rather. It's actually Wild West theme, I guess, coming into the music for this. Just imagine them doing a spaghetti western here. Right, we're now coming up to Stavrokonnu. I probably murdered that pronunciation. Another traditional Cypriot village out in the middle of nowhere. Yes, because it wasn't that long ago, but the nearest petrol station to here would have been down by the airport, but they've got one up near Asprokremmos Reservoir, which is a bit closer now. But that used to be something you had to bear heavily in mind when you went out exploring, that you had plenty of fuel in your car, because you didn't have petrol stations all over. But these days they seem to be a lot more common now, which is a good thing. Because no one likes running out of petrol, but if you run out of petrol in the middle of nowhere, you can be in big trouble. Only because of the fact that you'll be stuck in the middle of nowhere, not because you'll get mugged or anything. I mean, I remember when I was a young family, we got stuck. We had about 3 punctures coming out of Finicas. and I eventually had to walk my way. I found this little tavern, so I could use their phone, because in those days mobile signals were non-existent away from cities. So we phoned the car company who came and got us. But and the guy saying, "You're lucky it's happened to you in Cyprus, not somewhere else." And he was quite right. Cyprus is a very safe place. Anyway, there's not a lot to say about this countryside, other than I'll repeat what I said before. Actually, don't leave rubbish in the countryside. Don't dispose of cigarettes, etc. You only got to look around the fields here to imagine how quickly they would go up. And we don't want what happened in Limassol happening here. It's very beautiful though. Right, we're now coming up to Coletria. Old Coletria is on the right, just through there. That road will also take you down to Nata and, funnily enough, Finicas. But we're staying on this route, and it'll go through the new version of Coletria. And from memory, I'm trying to remember why they moved. I think it was probably to do with landslides and things, was why Old Coletria became Old Coletria. There are still a few houses down there. I think some of the old ones have been repaired as well. I suppose more modern building techniques makes sites more viable. But New Coletria is just up here. And on the right will be, on some years you'll be able to see Asprokremmos Reservoir. You can't quite yet because there's not enough water in it. But hopefully by the end of this winter it'll be a lot fuller, because every 7 years we've had really wet winters. So we're due one, but weather patterns have changed an awful lot over the last few years. Whether it'll still keep to its usual timescale, I don't know. But I do know that if it doesn't happen, then Cyprus is going to have serious water issues. Because it looks like they might scrape through this summer by using digging more boreholes, and the desalination plants, which are finally going to start kicking into production. But what people tend to forget is that a desalination plant produces water that's about 5 times the cost of regular water from the reservoir. So while it's a good solution in terms of, well, it provides water, it's not a cheap solution. So stop wasting water and scrubbing down driveways. Anyway, let's have the final bit of music. nice bit of R&B. Anyway, so we've gone through Coletria now. We've got the hills around Asprokremmos Valley to our right. So we're basically bringing it home now. I've got more country films in the bag. There's one which will be how to drive to Troodos Mountains the fast way, which basically takes you from Limassol up to Troodos village. You actually finish at Amiantos Hospital, the abandoned hospital, so you've got no excuses for not going up there and seeing all those lovely paintings now. So that one needs to have a voiceover done for it, and also music added, etc. I've also got a very quirky off-road drive I did. Oh, you can see a bit of the reservoir in the distance there. Look, there is some water there still. A little bit of blue on the right. And all these fields on the right here, by the way, in springtime, they're lovely fields of spring colours. It looks amazing. Had I the energy, I'd put some pictures up for it now, but I really just want to get this film out there now. Yeah, so there's those two long format films. And I'll be sneaking them out in amongst the more popular sort of like walking films and the night films that I do. But I know some of you like watching these long format ones, so I do try and help you as well. There's that petrol station I was telling you about. There it is. Good prices there as well, surprising really, considering it's in the middle of nowhere. Now you might find that when you go there, they're not good prices, because what often happens is that they have I wouldn't say a sale on, but they lower the price to lure people in so that people know about it, and then prices might go up again later. But that one has been there for a few years now, and the prices are still pretty good. Mind you, it's not Cyprus, you do get some fluctuations in petrol prices from area to area, but it's not as obvious as it was when we were in the UK. So coming down to the B6 eventually. And I guess this would make quite a nice place to cycle as well, because it's a fairly gentle hill. Whereas, I see people every day when I go up to Tsada and back, and then down to Paphos. People going up that hill on a push bike, and I can understand if you're like Tour de France ability level and stuff like that. But for a regular person on a push bike, that's one hell of a hard task. I remember cycling. I did London to Brighton and London to Oxford, and both of them would have at some point a murderous killer hill. But some of the hills around Sada, Kafikas, etc. are easily their match. So fair play to anyone who cycles them. Anyway, we've pretty much come down to the B6 now, and I will say goodbye when we hit that. But if you're still listening, then fair play to you, because this one's gone on for quite a while. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next film. Cheers!